The Marvel Cinematic Universe will go down in history as one of the most influential franchises in the history of cinema. However, its own history is a little complicated. A lot of the fun in watching a Marvel movie is keeping an eye out for the fun little nods to other entries in the series. The media giant is also starting to lean into its shared universe premise more than ever. Captain America's public service announcements were a genuine treat in Spider-Man: Homecoming, and Doctor Strange's presence in Thor: Ragnarok was a delight. It can be tough, though, to keep track of all these movies and TV shows in relation to one another. That's why this video is going to break down the entire MCU timeline in chronological order.
Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe appropriately begins chronologically with Captain America: The First Avenger. Taking place roughly between 1943 and 1945, this film sets up a lot of elements that pan over the course of the first phase of movies. In this movie, Chris Evans' Steve Rogers becomes the superhuman Captain America with the help of a secret superhuman serum. However, the formula is lost over the course of the film, leading to decades-long efforts to recreate it. The Tesseract, which later turns out to be the Space Stone, also makes its first appearance in the series during this film. That takes us to 1995, where the events of Captain Marvel happen. In this movie, Carol Danvers navigates her strange existence as a human pilot transformed into an intergalactic Kree warrior. We also see Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury and Clark Gregg's Phil Coulson dip their toes into a universe filled with alien threats. At the time of this movie's release, the characters in the MCU and its audience were pretty used to the galactic scale of the franchise. This movie sees the characters adjust to this massive scope and take on threats well beyond what they're accustomed to. That takes us right up to the movie that launched the franchise, the original Iron Man film. Taking place in 2010, Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark dons the Iron Man armor for the first time and uses it to destroy terrorist organizations that obtained weapons made by his company. This movie made the bones of the first phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and created an outline for other films to work off of. In this universe, Tony Stark's announcement that he is Iron Man acted as a kind of awakening for other superheroes, which is why the next three Marvel movies all take place in 2011. The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, and Thor all take place in 2011, and seemingly in that order. The Incredible Hulk features Dr. Bruce Banner, played by Edward Norton in this film, attempting to replicate the super soldier serum that empowered Captain America. Of course, it didn't go well and instead gave the Doctor his alter ego as the Hulk. While Bruce Banner is a pretty explored character in the MCU, the Hulk rarely grows or changes. Appearing in a post-credits scene in The Incredible Hulk, Tony Stark takes center stage in the next chronological film, Iron Man 2. In this movie, Stark has to grapple with what it means to be a hero and the misdeeds of his father who created much of Tony's vast fortune. The film ends with Agent Coulson discovering Thor's hammer in the middle of a desert, and then the events of the first Thor movie play out. Here, Chris Hemsworth's Thor is banished from Asgard by his father Odin, played by Anthony Hopkins. This film also sets up Tom Hiddleston's Loki as a recurring antagonist and later anti-hero, and back to a villain, and then again to an anti-hero in Thor: Ragnarok. He is the god of mischief, after all. The movie ends with the trickster god manipulating a scientist into creating a portal that will allow Thanos' Chitauri army to invade the planet. Following this, the events of Marvel's The Avengers take place in around June of 2012. The overwhelming success of this movie proved that Disney's gamble on a shared superhero universe was a good one, and that the MCU was here to stay. The film also heavily impacts future films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and its characters. Bruce Banner, now played by Mark Ruffalo, gains control of his Hulk transformation, Tony Stark begins his crisis of confidence that goes on to define his character, and Steve Rogers becomes a leader to both society and his fellow heroes. The events of this movie also greatly expand the scale of the MCU. This alien invasion introduces a threat to the entire planet, unseen in any prior movie. Subsequent films would match the stakes of Marvel's The Avengers and introduce much more powerful and dangerous villains. The MCU timeline also starts to get a bit more complicated or convoluted following the first Avengers movie, so buckle up for Phase 2. Kicking things off is Iron Man 3, which takes place in the December following the first Avengers movie, so it's still barely in 2012. This movie sees Tony Stark haunted by the events of the Avengers movie and his inability to stop the alien invaders by himself. However, by the end of the movie, he accepts his own limitations and starts working to improve the world as a person rather than a superhero. Tony Stark's character arc in this movie is nothing short of terrific, and he grows into an even more complex character as the series continues. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does run parallel to the events of the films, but the first movie to take place after the show starts is Thor: Dark World. In this movie, which takes place in 2013, Thor battles a group of dark elves obsessed with the destruction of Asgard. It ends with the revelation that Loki is impersonating Odin and that the Reality Stone is in the hands of the Collector. Next up, we have a bunch of big movies taking place in 2014. These films include Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Captain America: The Winter Soldier sees Steve Rogers deal with the lingering consequences of war ends, with the implication that the Mind Stone is with Loki's scepter. The Guardians of the Galaxy movies both cast an eye on how people robbed of foundational life experiences grow and mature. At the end of the first film, the Reality Stone is left in the care of the Nova Corps, and the Guardians of the Galaxy are considered heroes by much of the galaxy. At the end of the second film, an alien race the Guardians manipulated create a being named Adam with the sole purpose of destroying them. 2015 also saw the birth and defeat of Ultron in Avengers: Age of Ultron. Here, Tony Stark accidentally creates the villain Ultron in his efforts to create a global peacekeeping program. This movie saw the introduction of heroes like Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and Vision to the MCU. The movie also started a trend of questioning how much good Marvel's heroes are actually doing in their world. It also left the Mind Stone in Vision's possession and is necessary for him to live. Next up is Ant-Man, which is closer to a superhero heist movie than anything else. This title focuses on Paul Rudd's Scott Lang donning the Ant-Man mantle to prevent a villain from selling a powerful shrinking technology to Hydra. It ends with a hint at the impending Sokovia Accords and the rift it's creating between different factions of heroes. We do not know for certain, though, that Captain America: Civil War takes place in early 2016. This film features the Avengers turning against each other over restrictions on their activities as heroes. Tony Stark, who's extremely aware of the damage they can do, thinks that superhumans should be reined in. On the other hand, Steve Rogers is hesitant to relinquish any of his autonomy and fears he may become a government puppet once again. The movie ends with nearly half of the Avengers in hiding and its leaders, Captain America and Iron Man, unable to speak with each other. The two have yet to settle their differences in the MCU. Hopefully, they'll be able to work things out and band together to defeat Thanos in Avengers Endgame. Taking place later in 2016 is Spider-Man: Homecoming. While the beginning of the film does state that it takes place 8 years after Marvel's The Avengers, Disney has retconned this to only being 4 years later. In this movie, Peter Parker figures out what kind of hero he wants to be with the help of Tony Stark, who's acting as a father figure to the high schooler. We know for a fact that this movie takes place after Civil War because Captain America is called a war criminal. Closing out 2016 and taking the MCU into 2017 is Doctor Strange. Here, the titular Doctor, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, becomes the Sorcerer Supreme and becomes the keeper of the Time Stone. This movie also features a teaser of Doctor Strange helping Thor and Loki in their search for Odin, but the events of Black Panther actually take place next chronologically. This film expands on T'Challa's character and sees him becoming the ruler of the futuristic nation of Wakanda after his father's passing in Captain America: Civil War. The film ends with Wakanda revealing its advanced technology to the world. This nation is sure to play a large role in future Marvel films if the events of Infinity War are undone. It's also worth noting that the events of Ant-Man and the Wasp take place right around this time too. The movie takes place before the snap, but the event erases several main characters in its post-credits scene. This movie further explores the quantum realm. Just before Avengers Infinity War begins, Thor Ragnarok plays out. This movie features Thor and Loki confronting Asgard's colonialist history. Ultimately, they decide that the people of Asgard are more important than the community's splendor and leave for a new home. But then Thanos and his army shows up immediately after Ragnarok and Avengers Infinity War begins. Still set in 2017, this film sees Thanos rather easily collect the Infinity Stones and defeat each of the Marvel heroes. It ends with the iconic snap that uses the Infinity Gauntlet's reality-bending powers to eradicate half of all life in the universe. With little more than the original Avengers remaining, they will have to fight tooth and nail to restore the universe in Avengers Endgame. That's it! The complete Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline in chronological order. While no one is quite sure what lies beyond Avengers Endgame, except for Spider-Man: Far From Home, it's sure to be something even more ambitious than what we've seen before. Only time will tell what's next for the MCU, but Behind the Screen will be right here to break it down exactly when it happens.
So,
You with me?
I was, yeah. We were at,
Are you actively napping?
I drifted.
Where did I lose you?
Thanks so much for checking out this video. Please let us know in the comments down below if we missed anything. While you're there, please give this video a like and subscribe to Behind the Screen. We have loads of Marvel theories and breakdowns already available for your viewing pleasure and plenty more to come. And if you hit the bell icon, you'll get a notification the second our new videos go live.